So please continue. I'll stay just a little while longer, but thank you again for all your work. I applaud you for your service to the country. Thank you. Thank you.
Wanda just has a couple of more housekeeping things to do, so...
If you could see my house, you'd understand I'm not very good at housekeeping. And I left my list of items on my desk this morning, so it was a bad omen. Just a reminder, your cell phone, PDA, blackberries, strawberry, oranges, whatever you're carrying that makes noise could ring because of the disruption to the meeting. If you would put those on silent, or at least if it's a quiet vibrate to alert you, we would appreciate that. So have to always do that requisite reminder. Lots of questions and inquiries about the status of the charter and why this is a one-day meeting. Dr. Coe mentioned the fall scientific meeting on XMRV. That's just been posted to the NIH website. It's not clear. My understanding is there might be some ability to look at interaction of other viruses, some of that work that is underway. But the State of the Knowledge Conference coming up next spring, both of these are opportunities to, or in 2011, I should say, might not be spring, opportunities to have the committee visibly present. And we faced considerable uncertainty. And we were looking at January and February and had heard nothing about our submission of nominees for replacements for the outgoing members of the committee. We were very concerned. We wanted to get this meeting scheduled and announced because we know how difficult Dr. Coe's schedule is. And having 6 members, just a quorum, and a need to focus on a charter that actually expires in September. There's no question that charter will be renewed. The question is, do we simply rubber stamp the old charter, or in trying to listen to the committee and its concerns about what this advisory committee does, do we have opportunities to improve the specificity, to include ARC as an ex officio member in the charter, because that's where ex officio agencies need to be named, other changes of that sort. And it was, believe me, it was a consummate struggle. The research subcommittee was the only one that retained a quorum because of the outgoing members, where we were able to continue meeting. So it was, they could reflect to you what a struggle it was for us to proceed with meeting or not. And finally, we knew we just had to, either cancel entirely. We didn't consider that a viable option. We thought that would be worse than a one-day meeting, or conserve the funds, go with a one-day meeting, and look ahead to opportunities, perhaps the XMRV meeting, now that that's scheduled for the week of Labor Day. If that timing works out for another advisory committee meeting, then we can append the meeting. But we could still perhaps designate 1 or 2 advisory committee members. The committee can talk about this, to be specially charged with attending that meeting, reporting back on behalf of the advisory committee. I want the advisory committee visible, because this XMRV, obviously, the fall meeting was really exciting. It was full of hope. There was lots of buzz. It may or may not. The published data telling us, but we know there are limitations. You'll hear from Dr. Holmberg shortly about the blood studies. Those will be reported out, at least some of that will be reported out at the fall meeting. So I think it's going to be important for the advisory committee to be more visible in these settings. So that was another reason this year particularly to try to protect a very limited budget that, we report this on the Federal Advisory Committee database at around $135,000, and that is actually up from the $100,000 that it used to be. Even with that, and that's based on last year's activities, the bulk of that cost is webcasting and travel for members. So stopping the webcasting is not an option, and ensuring visibility of CFSAC, if we can be creative, this was one chance for a lot of reasons, convergence of factors. I'll take responsibility if folks think that's a bad decision. I'm not afraid to take the responsibility for making a bad decision, but I feel that in the fall, having CFSAC more visible in that scientific meeting And then whatever date we choose for the fall meeting, that we will, if you will, break even, it will not break the budget. We will be stood better, in fact, for being a little more conservative on this particular meeting and in asking that the focus be on the charter and the operational procedures, because we hadn't anticipated we would have our new members get through that process. It was mystifying to us. But we know that nominee, as Dr. Koh can share with you how long his process took. And members go through, advisory committee members go through almost the same process as presidential nominees. The vetting, the examination of possible conflicts of interest and everything is really a far more rigorous procedure than it's ever been. So, it turned out things were differently, but we had to go with what we knew was a sure thing, and that's how we wound up with a one-day meeting. So we can talk about the fall in the committee discussions. We can talk about opportunities to, as Dr. Koh suggested, keep the issues and concerns for the advisory committee before him and before the secretary. Those are all going to be parts, we hope, of your discussions throughout the day. We have just a few minutes before our next agenda, but let me just turn back to Chris and see where you want to go with.
So do we have Dr. Elizabeth Unger? Is Elizabeth here? Yes. Okay, good. So just to echo Wanda's comments, most of us know what it's like to work within a budget. And so, Wanda does very well with the budget. I think some of the questions that have been raised by the patients is the actual amount of that budget and whether it's appropriate for a disease of this magnitude. So I expect that we'll address some of those issues at this meeting and future meetings.
Okay.